So we've got a midterm coming up in about a week's time. So before that, I wanted to prepare this review video. So in this video, I'm going to be very quickly reviewing the short-run chapters that we've done. So that's 3, 4, and 5. Before we get started, just a reminder that jumping straight to this video is not really going to help you. The best way of using this video is to go through the book, the videos, the notes, whatever resource you want to use, and actually study first. And only once when you feel like you have prepared for the exam to some degree, maybe not completely ready, but at least you know the material, you are relatively comfortable with the material, only then you should come to this video. And only then will this video help you. Because I'm going to be moving very quickly, so if you're not familiar with the material, you're not really going to understand what the hell I'm talking about. Okay, so let's start very quickly with chapter 3, which was all about the goods market. So the two important learning outcomes from the goods market is, first of all, this equation, y equals to c plus I plus g is the first one. And second is the multiplier. Okay. So let's talk about each of them a little bit of details. So for this equation, in chapter 3, we assume that I was exogenous, G was exogenous, and C consumption was given by C naught, which is autonomous consumption, plus C1, which is MPC, times income minus, what was it, taxation. This is the equation for C. And once we evaluated this equation, what we saw was that output in the economy must always be equal to the demand for goods in equilibrium. And if we try to plot this, what we saw was that we start off with a 45-degree line here, and we have this. So this was the autonomous part. This was y, and this was the equilibrium point for us. And effectively, this is what gave us this relationship. So of course, I've rushed through this very quickly, but if you have gone through chapter 3, you should know what I'm talking about. And as far as multiplier is concerned, we know that multiplier is given by 1 divided by 1 minus C1. And what this effectively does is multiplies the effect. So if one person increases his consumption by $1, the overall effect in the economy is going to be more than 1. That was it from chapter 3. Then we moved on to chapter 4, which was about the financial market. And in the financial market, we talked about effectively the money market. We looked at money demand. We looked at money supply. And we sort of looked at basically the creation of money and high-powered money and all of that. Of course, we looked at commercial and central banks. And of course, we looked at central banks. We looked at something called high-powered money. There was a lot of details in this chapter, but overall, the finding was Y here, we have I here. out was that money supply is controlled by the government and it's fixed. Money demand, as always, is downward sloping, and that gives us the equilibrium. This is the equilibrium interest rate, and this is the equilibrium. And we also saw that how the central bank uh, controls the interest rate. So we saw something called open market operations. Okay. So far what we have done is we've looked at the goods market and the equilibrium condition for the goods market. And we've looked at the financial market and the equilibrium condition for the financial market. And then we moved on to chapter 5, which was the ISLM. So what we finally did in chapter 5 was we combined chapter 3 and chapter 4, or in better words, we combined the goods market and the financial market. We did this, well, the trick was very easy. So from chapter 3, we had this equation, C plus I plus G. And this was exogenous, this was exogenous. So in chapter 5, all we did was we endogenized investment. And we said that suppose investment depends on income and the interest rate. And so this equation became y equals to C plus, let me write down the whole thing. C is of course C naught plus C1y minus T plus investment now became this, and G remained exogenous. We will endogenize G later. And once we did that, what happened was we created a link between the goods market and the financial market. Because see that in the financial market, money demand and money supply moves around to gives us the equilibrium level of interest in the economy. So this is a money market phenomenon that we had not talked about in the goods market in chapter 3. But in chapter 5, we made sure that okay, instead of R, I'm just going to write down I. Okay. So in chapter 5, when we said this and this are related, we opened up a connection between the goods market and the financial market, because in interest rate now affects both the equilibrium in goods market and financial market. So we looked at the ICE relationship and we looked at the LM relationship, and what that looked like was something like this. So we have Y here, we have I here, this is IS, which from this relationship we can derive, and this is the LM relationship. Now remember that we had looked at two types of LM curve. One was the traditional approach and one using the more modern approach. So this is the modern version. Traditional version, it's important for you guys to know, but also know that we are going to be using the modern version for this chapter. So the ICE-LM model gives us this equation condition. So remember what the ICE-LM tells us. So the ICE curve gives us all the equilibriums in the goods market. So every single point on the ice curve represent a new equilibrium in the goods market. The LM curve gives us all the equilibriums in the financial market. And when these two intersect together, uh, we have, so this point right here, let's call it E, point gives us the only point where we have equilibrium in both markets. So for example, at this point, the financial market is in equilibrium, but the goods market is not in equilibrium. In this point, none of the markets are in equilibrium. This point, none of the markets are in equilibrium. In this point, the goods market is in equilibrium. The financial market is not in equilibrium. Only in point E, at this level of interest and output, do we have both the financial and the goods market in equilibrium. Another thing you guys should know, uh, I'm not going through it right now, but you should, is shapes of ice and LM. So the question is, why are they shaped like this? Why is one downward sloping? Why is one flat? And the second thing you guys should know is what changes IS7 curves. So what shifts the curves? What will have to happen for us to have ice curve over here? What will have to happen for LM curve to shift up here? What are the factors that's shifting them? So that is what you should know. So that was chapter 3, 4, and 5. We looked at the goods market. Then we looked at the financial market. We combined them together by endogenizing investment function, and that gave us the ISLM curve, the ISLM framework, which effectively shows us the different points, all the points, let's say, where goods market is in equilibrium, all the points where the financial market is in equilibrium, and the one point, the one equilibrium where both the markets are in equilibrium. But notice we have not done one thing. In the short run, we have not talked about price, no price. Why? That was one of the assumptions we had made at the very beginning of the course when we assumed that short run is small enough that price level is not changing. Price is fixed. We are assuming that if price is 100 taka today of one good, it's going to remain 100 taka within our short run analysis, within that time frame. But then we moved on to the medium run analysis, and we, of course, changed that.